Welcome back. Businesses around the world still are recovering from a massive tech outage that knocked out systems at everything from airports to hospitals. Porter Airlines was forced to cancel all of its flights until 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon. The airline says its systems have since been slowly coming back online, but some of the largest airlines in the world, including American Airlines, United, and Delta, are reporting issues still today. WestJet and Air Canada have said that they're operating as usual. The issue affects computers running Microsoft Windows following a security update from a cybersecurity firm, CrowdStrike. Microsoft says the outage was not a security incident or a cyber attack. The head of that cybersecurity firm, CrowdStrike, has also apologized for the outage. To help us glean some insight into what happened, I'm joined now by Mohit Rajhans. He's a media consultant with ThinkStart.ca. Mohit, always appreciate your expertise. And I guess the first thing to ask you is, considering this is dealing with something that everybody almost has at home, Windows computers, this seemed like something that could have been known to happen potentially before. It just needed something like a bug to happen in a security update. So what happened here, honestly?
So I think what you're alluding to is the fact that we've seen a house of cards crumble when we were supposed to be in a world that felt a little bit more secure when we all use a product like Microsoft. And that's truly what's happened here. Microsoft 365 services were down for a greater part of yesterday and across the world. And those are actually interconnected into so many things that many corporations probably don't even realize that they're actually connected to. Take, for example, in school boards, if the school was on right now, SharePoint would have been a big problem there. For the airline industry, it obviously became a bigger issue because they've got the loudest voice. So from a communication standpoint, they've got a global voice. And the reason we're talking so much about the travel disruption is because they were able to get to so many people. But the truth is, Andrew, the ripple effect of this is global and will be felt across industries.
And in terms of how this could be, in terms of the ripple effects that we may not be talking about yet, you know, I know that this was something that affected hospital communications, and that's obviously much more, you know, when it comes to the importance, that deals with people that are in a life and death situations potentially versus someone who's waiting to get on an airplane. Now, where else could this be true, in your mind, felt? You're talking about just how ubiquitous 365 is.
Yeah, I think what we're really talking about now is the future of work and how we have to do a little bit of a pause and audit on how we're all connected that way. This is no longer about just a disruption in the way that logistics are happening. It's really about a loss of labor time that we've seen around the world. People uncertain. For example, what do we do now to get back online? Does your bank send you a text message of a link, or do you continue to ignore the text messages that you've been told by companies when it comes down to using their systems? I think we're in a problematic situation right now when it comes down to tech companies not sharing enough advice about how people can stay secure. Look, just this week alone, we've had 3 or 4 cyber crime or cyber and tech related stories that have had nothing to do with each other. So that just goes to show that we have evolving issues that are happening with a ripple effect on many businesses.
Now, beyond the personal, I guess, response that people are supposed to have, knowing what to open and what not to open and be, you know, as tech aware as possible. What about the industry at large? You're talking about some of the biggest companies in the world. Microsoft is among the biggest tech companies, period. And you know, I know the stat's a little old, and I think Apple may have a higher market share now. But for a long time, 9 in 10 computers that were being used by everyday people were running on Windows. In terms of the potential questions about how to get out of something like this happening again, is there potentially something that is there any way to democratize the internet as it was supposed to be back in the 90s?
Well, that's a little bit to unpack. I think what we have to really sort of figure out is how do companies mitigate their risks associated with building so much of a dependency on something like Microsoft. And I think that the one thing we are moving towards is the fact that companies will be able to make proprietary systems and make closed systems that they don't have to rely so much on people. But let's not forget that CrowdStrike was also in the business of cyber defense. And so the trickle down effect and the way that companies will have to audit. Look, I'm hearing from professionals in this business, and they're just as miffed because nobody is taking blame and nobody's figuring out the real way to come back online so that everybody doesn't suffer from this problem again. This is a fluid situation, and I think it's going to be interesting to see who is held accountable in the end.
Now, one group that didn't get affected whatsoever was the Quebec Ministry of Health, which still uses, I've been told, fax machines. So what do you think about that, Mohit?
Well, I think this undigitized world that we do still have in our life actually wins this battle when it comes down to not being as accessible. But the truth is that we're building systems now that we're talking about that are going to help us and co-pilot us, as they say. And if we can't figure out a simple update, we might be in bigger trouble.
Well, I sincerely hope we don't have to talk for a bigger problem later on. Mohit, we appreciate your time as always. This is Mohit Rajhans, a media consultant with ThinkStart.ca. Again, appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.